Hello, welcome to everyone who has joined us from all the parts of the world. Today we are pleased to promote our second ESG call. For us, it's an extremely relevant topic, which we see as fully integrated and aligned to our business purpose. We are a company in the planted forest sector, which manufactures products from renewable sources, products that are part of the daily lives of billions of people.
Suzano bases its business model on a continuous and renewable cycle. We are part of the planted tree sector, occupying over 10 million hectares throughout Brazil for commercial use, and another 6 million hectares solely for conservation. Our commercial plantations are situated on what has already been previously degraded or used for other crops. We harvest only the trees that we plant. And for every 6 hectares of planted eucalyptus, we conserve 4 hectares of forest, which helps to preserve biodiversity, control pests and diseases, and maintain the ecosystem services. Since we practice sustainable forestry management, using the most advanced forest technology available worldwide, we have been operating in the same area for over 6 decades in a continuous cycle of renewal. To continue operating in the same locations, with increasingly more productive and resilient plantations, we constantly invest in innovation and technology, from the DNA of trees to the management of our areas and our influence in the regions, generating and sharing value. We understand sustainability in a systemic manner. As such, we dedicate ourselves to the sustainable development of communities in the regions where we operate. The scale of our operations is reflected in our responsibility, ambition, and capacity of mobilization towards a regenerative society. We also remain dedicated to expanding the offering of products from renewable sources that can replace, with increasingly short periods and increasingly higher volumes, those made from fossil materials. We do all this knowing that we have a long journey ahead and that we will not achieve significant results alone. Hence, engagement in building local and global partnerships is essential. The battle for a fairer and more sustainable planet is not just for us, it is for everyone. Suzano, we plant the future.
We understand that it is essential for civil society, governments, and companies to work together for the transition to a more sustainable model for people and planet. And for that, we need a sense of urgency. We are undergoing a climate crisis, a biodiversity crisis, and a poverty crisis. And each day, each of these takes their toll. We must provide solutions, and we have to do it by working with everyone, not just those who are already advanced in their sustainability work, but also by working with those who are embarking to this journey for the first time. No one can do this alone. In a journey to become an increasingly regenerative company for a regenerative society, we actively seek to build bridges, networks, and partnerships with others who can help us. Today, we will welcome some of the members of the leadership team, as well as other close partners, and stakeholders, including on-the-ground leaders and technical experts. It is important to have an external perspective. Therefore, we are honored to have here today as our host someone who is very familiar with the role of both business and society. Joel Makower, chairman and co-founder of GreenBiz. Joe is a writer, speaker, and entrepreneur, and has been a respected global voice for decades, connecting business, technology, and sustainability. Welcome, Joe.
So my takeaway from what you just said is that two things. One, these three crises, the climate crisis, the poverty crisis, and the biodiversity crisis, are interconnected, they're intertwined, and we have to deal with all of them at the same time. And two, that, as you said, no one can do this alone. It's going to take partnerships and collaboration among business, the public sector, and civil society to address these at the scale, scope, and speed that we need. So I'm wondering, what do you see as the role for Suzano in addressing these three things together, both in terms of the changes that we all want to see in the world and as a business opportunity for the company?
Joe, we want to have a leading company to bring all the other parts of the society together to this journey. We believe that is critical for the world that we do it right now. We need a call to action. We cannot postpone, we cannot procrastinate anymore the situation. And to do it, it's a running process that we have 8 billion people together. Or everybody's going to win, or everybody's going to lose. We need to be together on this journey.
Well, talk a little bit about what your own journey to this topic, what you bring to this, the solution set, and how you see your own legacy as part of this.
Joe, I believe there is a generation issue that we have. A lot of companies and a lot of entities are telling that they want to be net zero in 2050. We cannot postpone that. We cannot wait for 2050. If we stay with the same level of carbon emissions or increasing level of carbon emissions that we are facing right now, we are not going to reach the 2050. We needed to do something right now. And to do it, I think Suzano is the right side of the equation. We are absorbing carbon at this time. We have more carbon sequestration than emission. The net amount, it's very positive to the society. In addition to that, we can replace other materials with products coming from the tree. The combination of both could be part of the solution to the world.
I think a lot of companies, a lot of your fellow CEOs think that, well, we're just one company. We really can't make a big enough difference. What have you learned about Suzano's ability to make a difference?
First, Joe, I think we are in this process to be much more collaborative. We do not want to have a position that we are the only company doing that. And we cannot split the efforts that we have in the society. We need to work together. Then I would like to invite other companies to join us on this process on a very positive and constructive solutions. On the other hand, I believe it's very important that we do not have one company or one part of the civil society working alone. We need to work on this process in order to address the problems that we have in the society. And we do not believe that the governments will have funds and resources, human resources to address the problems. We need companies to join, to embark on this transition immediately.
But you have shareholders, you have employees, you have a lot of stakeholders who depend to some extent on business as usual, and yet you want to make a significant shift so that Suzano is, as you are already, becoming part of the solution and not part of the problem. How do you do both things at the same time?
We have 3 pillars on our culture. One of the pillars of our culture is create value and share value with all the stakeholders. There is the art of managing the company. We need to balance everything. We need to understand that we are not going to maximize results in the short term on the next quarter. We want to keep improving our efficiency, our productivity, but use this as a source, as a fund to share with all the stakeholders, with customers, with suppliers, with shareholders, with communities, with team members, with everyone. We believe that this is a process that we can create and share value with everyone.
Thanks for the insights, Walter. The platform is now open for your questions, so please submit them and we'll answer as many possible in a few minutes. We've heard a bit about the E and the S aspects of ESG. Let's now ask Bachi to share how Suzano has been advancing on the G, which has a different dynamic. Right, Bachi?
Sure, Joel, no doubt. Suzano has had a journey of continuous evolution in corporate governance, which I shared with you in the first edition of the ESG Call last year. I would say that currently we have already achieved well-established structures of governance, and we have a constant and active internal analysis of the opportunities to keep advancing on our policies and practices. We always value the opinion of our investors and the ESG rankings and indices, just to name a few sources. And I'm happy to say that we carefully analyze each of them, taking to the appropriate forums for discussion. Sometimes managing to fully attend, sometimes partially, and sometimes not attending to them either, but still keeping our minds open to constantly rethinking. As corporate governance is a topic of huge value to investors, I asked Camila to share with you our main progress since the first ESG Call.
Thank you, Bach. But before I jump into that topic, I would like to say that today I'm proud to wear a garment made by Spinova with 100% Suzano fiber. This t-shirt represents our confidence in expanding our addressable market to the immense market of textiles and helping to answer the paramount question of how the world will sustainably address its growing population. Now let me focus on corporate governance. In the last 12 months, we have acted internally in several fronts, but I would like to highlight two of other achievements. On the nomination policy for the board of directors and its composition, and on the management's compensation policy. Within the scope of the board of directors, we formally established a clear commitment to a core topic to Suzano: diversity. The nomination policy now has a target of reaching 30% diversity, with a minimum level of 20%, and this guideline is already in practice. Suzano's board, elected at the last general meeting in April, has already reached the threshold of 30% of gender diversity, having 3 women within its 9 members. Still talking about our board, it is worth mentioning that more than 50% of its members are independent, and one of these independent members is a newly appointed risk expert who has proven experience in risk management and compliance. About the second achievement, now related to the management compensation policy, which is equally relevant to our investors, it contains now the well-known malus and clawback clauses, which aim to protect the company in the event of a severe misconduct by any of its executives, associated with the major negative impact on company's market cap or reputation. While malus prevent the payment of variable compensation from being granted partially or totally, the clawback clause recovers it if it has already been disbursed by the company. And when we discuss corporate governance, we cannot fail to address the fundamental pillars of transparency and accountability. Christina, I invite you to bring your view on how we have advanced in these aspects.
Thank you, Camila. When it comes to transparency, we continue improving mechanisms for accountability, ensuring these align with international frameworks and emerging regulations. In May, we published our annual report and launched the new Sustainability Center, which provides an overview of our sustainability performance and the evolution of our commitments to renew life. In today's event, you will, at moments, see some of these icons. They will indicate the stages of our value chain, stakeholders, and specific sustainable development goals related to each individual initiative or program. I arrived at Suzano less than a year ago, and I have already confirmed that here we take sustainability very seriously, and we have a systemic view on issues related to business, people, and planet. The commitments to renew life are an essential pillar of this practice. We present here 3 of them, which are tied to sustainability-linked bonds. As you can see, in 2021, we made significant progress in industrial water reduction. We had a slight setback in greenhouse gas emissions and a very important evolution in the commitment related to women in leadership. We aim to reach the targets in line with our 2025 and 2030 goals. However, it is important to recognize that progress is not necessarily linear. Fluctuations in the course of business, such as variations in the level of production, may have a significant influence on our result. Indeed, we have challenges ahead. Right, Chris?
That's correct, Christina. We have a wide range of ambitious goals and objectives, don't we? And what guides us to prioritize and place our focus under the systemic view of sustainability is our materiality matrix. In it, we list 8 priority macro themes. And in today's event, we will focus on the top 3 of these: climate change, biodiversity, and socio-territorial development. As Christina mentioned, it is a complex scenario. So today we will address not only our progress and achievements, but also some of the challenges that we are facing. And above all, where and how we can identify possibilities for partnerships and wider changes outside of Suzano. And to talk about the first topic of our materiality matrix, climate change, we invite Fernando Bertolucci and Yasmin Paiva to join us.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everybody. As Walter and Joel mentioned, the climate crisis is, without any doubt, a great challenge for the ecosystem and also for our business. However, Suzano has been working hard on strategies to adapt as well as in contribute to the global journey of mitigating climate change by seeking the reduction of carbon emissions throughout our value chain. Climate management and resilience are intertwined. Understanding the climate to mitigate the effects of these changes has been one of our major objectives. For over 30 years, Suzano has made significant investments to understand and monitor climate patterns, as Yasmin will present to us.
Thanks, Fernando. We currently have 83 monitoring stations and use 96 government ones. These databases are associated with models which help us to predict potential problems in our forests, as well as establish strategic planning of plantations to mitigate climate risks. Through technical partnerships with universities, research institutes, and NGOs, we have generated knowledge for our business and for the forest sector. One example is the understanding of environmental clusters in the region we operate in, based on climate and soil characteristics. According to published paper and on our accumulated knowledge about climate patterns, we have scientific evidence that climate change is a reality. We have generated knowledge for our business and for the forest sector. One example is the understanding of environmental clusters in the regions we operate, based on climate and soil characteristics. According to published papers and on our accumulated knowledge about climate patterns, we have scientific evidence that climate change is a reality. We have also used data from global climate change studies, including the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Scenarios. These scenarios, combined with our local on-the-ground research, indicate how our forest productivity may be impacted over the next 40 years, as you can see in this slide. Red colors indicate a potential decrease in forest productivity due to climate change.
Considering what Yasmin has just presented, we should ask, are we ready for these new climate challenges? In this slide, we present a summary of the main actions we have developed in the last 3 decades. At the core of our forest strategy is the development of more resilient eucalyptus trees. For example, we have the largest private eucalyptus genetic base in the world. As a consequence, we have been able to continuously identify and select new eucalyptus clones resilient to climate adversity. We also use advanced tools such as artificial intelligence and analytics, to identify the best match between clone and environment in a very precise way. With these improvements, we are better prepared to mitigate climate change. Thus, our ultimate goal is to balance forest productivity and sustainability.
A healthy forestry industry depends on healthy standing forests, and a standing forest means, among other countless benefits, drawing down greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. Joining me now are Sarita Severian and Julio Ramundo, who work closely on decarbonization initiatives, including those related to removing carbon from the atmosphere and generating carbon credits. Sarita?
Thanks, Joe, and hello, everyone. Suzano growth has historically been fueled by an increase in eco-efficiency in its operation that leads to emissions intensity reduction. This is a result of several initiatives to intensify the use of biomass and replace the oil fuel by natural gas in our plants. As part of the work on a robust climate strategy, we recently participated in an ACT pilot project, the new and highly ambitious initiative led by CDP and the French government, supported by the UN. The results show Suzano ahead of its peers in the pulp and paper segment, virtually every item measured, including carbon footprint.
For the future, Suzano will increase its total pulp production in 20% by 2025 with Cerrado Project startup. Even so, the greenhouse gas emissions will not follow the same upward pace. New low-carbon technologies, such as the biomass gasification, will lead Suzano to eliminate fossil fuel consumption in the lime kiln of Cerrado Project. It's worth mentioning that we'll keep looking for innovation to go further on our journey in the future. We invite you to hear our partner Luiz Bordini, CEO of Andritz Brazil, and his perspective on this pathway.
So Andritz, since a long time, has put a lot of efforts to develop and create technologies that bring our process of pulp production to the highest level of sustainability. Starting since the wood yard, where we developed the equipment and technology to give us, I can say, the most efficiency of the equipment, reducing to a minimum the wood losses, increasing, of course, the yield. And the other technologies in the recovery area, reducing as much as possible the emissions in our recovery boiler, that today the levels that's achieved in terms of emission is one of the most strict in the world. So all this technology is being applied in the Cerrado project. Other important technology that's being applied in Cerrado project is the gasification of biomass to feed the energy to the lime kilns. So we can say that the use of fossil fuels in the pulp mill today is reduced to a minimum, only for the startup of some equipment, but in a daily operations, everything is being done with the biomass and the sub-products that we have in the pulp production technology.
Forward through the value chain, we recognize the challenge and the importance of networking with partners to achieve more ambitious goals. Through our climate change program in the value chain, launched in 2021, we engaged around 80 suppliers, which accounted for more than 60% of our spending. Based on the results of the evaluation made in partnership with CDP, the second cycle of the program will offer support to companies seeking to evolve their climate practices. We invite you to hear Dexter Galvin, Global Director at CDP, and Daniele Andrade from Rumo, logistic arm of Cosan Group, to share their views about the program.
Suzano has been a long partner of CDP, We're very proud to be able to support Suzano today. I'm particularly happy that Suzano have elected to engage their supply chain starting in 2021 on climate change. And that's a really exciting development, of course, because many of you will know the vast majority of a company's emissions are actually beneath the surface in the supply chain. So we found that, in fact, 11.4 times the average company's emissions are actually beneath the surface in the supply chain. So it's a critical area for organizations to take action. We are already suffering from the realities of climate change. So we must take action, and we are very pleased to be working with Suzano to take that action, and I'm really pleased to see them push that leadership out into their supply chain.
For us, sustainability is an essential part of our operation and is already incorporated into our business strategy and decision-making process. Initiatives like CDP plays a very important role for companies to engage their value chain on climate change opportunities, because it is possible to identify actions that are being carried out, their effectiveness and opportunities, besides to define actions for improvements. The involvement of the chain is essential to evolve towards climate change and present consistent results through training, disclosure, and information sharing, understanding the market requirements and the need to take actions.
We are proud of our carbon negative status, which means that we are removing more carbon from the atmosphere in our forest areas than we emit in all our operations. In addition to the removals, Suzano has fossil and biogenic carbon emission, which must be counted and reported separately, according to the IPCC and the GHG protocol. The reason is a fundamental distinction in carbon flows. While fossil sources increase the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, biogenic sources do not. As you can see in the animation, biogenic carbon available in the atmosphere is used in the tree growth, going to the wood or bioenergy to the operation, and removed again in the new forest growth cycle. Due to Suzano's huge amount of native and planted areas, our operation is increasing the removal of carbon from the atmosphere, a process which enables eligibility for carbon credits. As companies progress in their decarbonization commitments, carbon credits can play a central role. They can compensate part of their emissions through the use of offsets, while taking action to implement new technologies to reduce future emissions.
Our forests, both planted and native, remove carbon while growing. The planted forests are renovated in such a way that an average stock of carbon always remains stable and permanent. When we grow a new forest, transforming a degraded land into a carbon-rich vegetation, the carbon removals can also be eligible for carbon credits. The landscape is complemented with native forest formations, a conservation area that holds carbon permanently. Removals from existing established forests also deliver environmental benefits, but they are not necessarily eligible for carbon credits. Our carbon credit pipeline at Suzano began by developing projects in the areas of expansion of our commercial forests. Our first project is now under the validation audit phase with the certification body. In addition to carbon removal, we amplify the co-benefits, both in terms of promoting more biodiversity and support to the communities in our area of activity. Future scenarios indicate an increase in demand for carbon credits at increasing prices, both in the voluntary market and in compliance mechanisms. Brazil has just published its initial rules to implement a regulated market in the country. Looking beyond planted forests, our collective attention now must turn to the opportunity to restore significant areas of native forests throughout our country. At Suzano, we already have the experience of conserving 1 million hectares of native vegetation, and we want to use this knowledge and capacity to implement large-scale projects which can make significant contribution to the world. And the use of financing mechanisms such as carbon credits will allow us to unlock this activity and contribute to the wide-scale carbon removals.
As I said, all of this comes from a healthy, standing forest. Conserving it and adding new areas of forest in degraded areas is essential to avoid the worst impacts of climate change as established by the Paris Agreement, and at the same time, as you'll see, to preserving biodiversity.
Nós estamos muito próximos de uma situação de irreversibilidade da perda de nossas espécies, da perda de nossa biodiversidade. Por isso é fundamental que ações de informação sobre biodiversidade, de empatia com as outras espécies, sejam tomadas imediatamente. E o setor privado tem um papel importantíssimo nessa história. E ele precisa ir além do que a gente chama de atitude normal ou de ações que são simplesmente dentro da legalidade. O setor privado precisa repensar fortemente qual o legado que ele quer deixar. As soluções baseadas na natureza podem nos trazer as respostas que nós tanto precisamos para seguir o nosso caminho rumo à sobrevivência da espécie humana. Precisamos ter ações muito efetivas de combate ao desmatamento, de combate à caça, ao tráfico, de implantação de unidades de conservação e outros tipos de áreas protegidas, de restauração de todos os ecossistemas. Tudo isso conversa diretamente com a biodiversidade. Então é imprescindível que esse olhar para os territórios seja um olhar onde caibam todos os setores para que a retomada econômica, por exemplo, seja verde, mas também inclusiva, e caiba também a natureza.
Hello everyone. Suzano embraced its role in the protection of ecosystems. We have one of the largest private forest areas in the world, safe havens for thousands of species of fauna and flora. Our business model includes almost 1 million hectares for environmental conservation. And since the early 90s, we've been involving in the development of initiatives to protect biodiversity. Here are some data that translates the positive impacts of our business model. 4,000 species of fauna and flora have been identified in our areas, some of which are rare. "90,000 hectares are classified as high conservation value due to their social environmental wealth. 35,000 hectares are under restoration. For instance, as you can see in these satellite images, the benefits of a sustainable forest management. The first image was taken when we initiated our operations in an already degraded area. And the second image shows the result of about 10 years later. This is a very good and clear example of how we operate as a regenerative company. Through the cycle, we enhance the native species in the landscape, mosaics, eucalyptus and native trees together. Suzano's business model involves an inseparable relationship with the environment. The logic is quite simple. As a nature-based company, our eucalyptus depend on natural resources, such as water and soil to continuously grow, cycle over cycle in the same areas. Biodiversity is essential to the provision, regulation, and support of these resources, strengthening our productivity and therefore competitiveness in the long run. We will now hear more from Maria about how our impact takes place in practice.
O caso dos muriquis é um dos mais emblemáticos na concepção do nosso compromisso de biodiversidade. Em 1998, a espécie foi identificada em uma das áreas da Suzano e desde 2006 nós monitoramos e protegemos os muriquis do sul, que é o maior primata das Américas. Hoje, 3% de todos os muriquis do sul que habitam em vida livre no país utilizam das nossas áreas. Essa imagem, captada em área da Suzano pelos nossos parceiros da Universidade Federal de Viçosa, mostram alguns deles, e também as câmeras de monitoramento que os flagram frequentemente. A construção de corredores ecológicos vai proporcionar que animais como esse, entre outros, além de espécies vegetais, possam ter um ganho no território protegido e assim retornar a povoar os habitats regenerados e conectados. Para nossa satisfação e para o bem-estar de todos, acreditamos na riqueza da diversidade.
Hello! A little bit more than a year has passed since we announced our long-term commitment to mitigate one of the main global causes of biodiversity loss, the fragmentation of natural habitats. After the announcement, we focused on the development of a strong action plan that will guide us in our journey to connect, using ecological corridors, 500 million hectares of fragmented areas in the Cerrado, Atlantic rainforest, and the Amazon biomes by 2030. It's important to mention that everything that we have done so far and will do along the way is based on field studies, science-based methodologies, and dialogues with farmers and local organizations. As an example, we have on the screen one of our corridors located in the Atlantic rainforest. The map shows how the commitment will be developed, seeking the highest biodiversity level fragments in the landscape, connecting the most important areas to protect and conserve biodiversity. Looking at the commitment's development, we have divided the work into 6 fronts. 1. Restore and create ecological corridors to connect fragmented areas. 2. Introduce productive restoration models with ecological functions where eucalyptus plantations or other types of agriculture are located. 3. Support local communities in implementing the productive restoration models. 4. Have palm trees and primates as bioindicators and flag species. 5. Create private conservation units to expand the integrated management of protected areas in the landscapes. And 6. Protect the corridors and their surroundings against wildfires, hunting, and illegal logging. In the second semester of 2022, we will set up the baselines for these work fronts, start the ecological restoration of natural forests, and the development of productive restoration models. By 2030, we want to connect more than 9,000 fragmented areas and establish more than 1,000 kilometers of ecological corridors. We will engage hundreds of farmers and establish partnerships once 32% of the surface area of the corridors is to take place. This is a goal that transcends Suzano, so the key to achieving it is collaboration. Shared value with local communities will help these corridors come to life. Let's hear from the Institute of Ecological Research, our partner, how initiatives like this are relevant to biodiversity.
The challenges involving biodiversity are extremely relevant, complex, and therefore they do require the implementation of systemic initiatives within the landscape. Suzano's biodiversity commitment was specifically designed to enable not only the restoration and the conservation of areas that are relevant to each biome, but also to provide socioeconomic benefits to the local communities. The approach, developed in collaboration with our institution on a very simple but very powerful rationale, the creation of networks with stakeholders aiming at identifying and protecting and sharing social, environmental, and economic values.
To fulfill this commitment, Suzano foresees having to make agreements and partnerships with rural communities to support such things as agroforestry, conservation, and the sustainable production and commercialization of goods from the forest. Standing forests also support the communities around them because they provide sustainable economic activity and address Brazil's pressing inequality challenge. Marcelo Porto and Luis Bueno will take us on a journey through Suzano's social development policy.
Hello, Joel, and hello, everyone. In order to contextualize Suzano's approach to social territorial development, it is first necessary to understand the scale of the inclusion challenge in Brazil. We live in a continent-sized country where around 13% of the population lives below the poverty line. Recently, Brazil has been re-added to the World Food Programme's hunger map, having last appeared on the map a decade ago. In 2022, the country registered over 120 million Brazilians living with some degree of food insecurity, and unemployment now reaches almost 13% of the economically active population. The pandemic took more than 5 million young people and children out of school, compromising futures that were already exposed to a situation of vulnerability. So any effective action by a company like Suzano needs to be systemic and to promote scalable actions for real change.
Suzano operates in 201 municipalities in Brazil, spread in 9 different states. They are home to 3.3 million people, and a third of them lives below the poverty line. Among our neighbors, there are 126 traditional communities, for example, indigenous people and quilombolas. Our initiatives in those areas focus on the real needs of the local population, structured initiatives that goes beyond philanthropy. Over the last 10 years, we have already invested over $100 million on those areas, and we have a permanent relationship with almost 1 million people. One of the best cases that we have is the São Domingos community in the Espírito Santo state. Let's take a look.
Começamos do zero e hoje nós estamos bem, eu acho que tem uns 200% de cooperativa média.
A gente está aqui no município de Conceição da Barra, é um município aqui no extremo norte do Espírito Santo. Acho que o caso da cooperativa de São Domingos, ela não surge de uma ideia da Suzano para a comunidade, ela surge de uma provocação da comunidade para a Suzano. Tudo isso foi feito lá em 2013, a gente tinha um grupo formado e foi efetivamente registrada a cooperativa quilombola de São Domingos.
Eu mesmo falo, eu respiro cooperativa.
E a vontade também da cooperativa, porque surgiu renda para os que já estão dentro dela.
Fazer com que todas as equipes entendam que elas são importantes para o relacionamento.
Porque 8 anos é 8 dias dentro de uma empresa, não, cuidando do que é dela, fazendo aquilo com o maior carinho para dar tudo certo, né?
Então o aprendizado mais nosso foi todo aqui dentro da cooperativa e dentro da Suzano, que hoje a gente está prestando serviço, que está aprendendo muita coisa aqui dentro e está levando até para dentro da própria casa nossa, né?
Aqui começou do nada e eu estou muito orgulhoso por isso.
Hello, everybody. The São Domingos case is a good example of scalable social impact business and of our community engagement methodology. In particular, it recognizes the challenges and addresses them by establishing a direct communication channel between Suzano and the communities. It also considers the social and economic impacts of our business and together with the community develops a common understanding of the context, challenges, goals, and solutions. All this generates our social license to operate, thus maintaining business stability. Suzano needs systemic actions which consider not just its value chain and the wider business, but also its ability to connect with other relevant social actors. This can be done through strategic partnerships that leverage the potential and create an environment of mutual cooperation. This is how we will achieve the goal of lifting 200,000 people from below the poverty line in our areas of operation by 2030. The beginning of the journey has been difficult, given the scale and the challenges, full of learning opportunities, but with countless rewarding results. In 2021, 9,000 people were lifted from below the poverty line and 21,000 people were positively impacted by our programs. These beneficiaries saw their income generation increase on average by 57%. Together, our programs generate around $18 million in revenue for these communities, producing 35,000 tons of food and other products. The case of sustainable extractivism is an example of an investment strategy in territorial articulation, which results in socioeconomic autonomy of these groups, all while enabling the conservation of native forests. Today, these projects are organized into territorial clusters with several partners focused on diversifying and adding value to socio-biodiversity products. The enhancement of an inclusive bioeconomy has a positive impact on families' food security, quality of life, and on conservation of essential social and environmental attributes for the sustainability of these territories.
Porque antes a gente tinha a renda só dos poupamentos do açaí. E essa renda ela só fica aqui 6 meses. Então os outros 6 meses as famílias não têm renda. Então a utilização desses resíduos, que é o caroço, fazendo o café, o tijolo e a muda, vai agregar renda aqui dentro, sem contar a visualização da comunidade.
Não derriba essas palmeiras, ei, não derriba os palmeiral. Você já sabe que não pode derribar, precisamos preservar as riquezas naturais.
Aqui nós temos o coco inteiro. A gente extrai o mesocarpo dessa farinha, as farinhazinhas ficam localizadas aqui. Dessa massa aqui, a gente leva no moinho, tritura e fazemos essa massa aqui. Nós produzimos essa farinha, que é a farinha de mesocarpo que nós chamamos, que é a farinha do babaçu.
Hoje a gente tem o artesanato, tem um sabonete, e tem um azeite e tem um óleo, tem a cocada.
A nossa fonte de renda aumentou muito. Hoje a alimentação da gente já está bem diferente. Por quê? A gente trabalha, a gente já tem nossos próprios negócios, né?
De 2019 para cá, a prova mais nítida que a gente tem de evolução é você olhar a nossa lista de comunidades que querem ser beneficiadas pelos programas. Isso nos dá um olhar de acerto, sabe?
Então o nosso olhar, quando é atuando com programas e projetos sociais hoje, é ter um olhar estratégico e sistêmico, que olhe desde a pessoa que vai produzir, mas olha a sua cadeia para comercializar, olha as questões de organização e logística, olhe o escoamento de produtos e olhe também a questão de rede de parceiros, né?
O que a gente está conseguindo é trabalhar de uma forma muito especial a autoestima dessas mulheres. É sobre o valor. Esse é sobre o valor, né?
Babaçu é vida, né? Porque a floresta é vida. Sem a floresta, nós não somos nada.
We're very proud of this work and all of sustainability initiatives and programs across our organization. Each of our employees, both direct and indirect, fully bought into these ethos and understand that by doing good for the world, we're doing good for business. And now, I'd like to invite Joel Makower back onto our stage.
Thank you, Christina. Really interesting stuff. I want to pick up where you sort of left off with the social innovation piece. Talk a little bit more about why social innovation has become such an important issue for Suzano.
That's a great question, Joel. And I think in an industry like ours, in the companies that have come to form Suzano, this always happened. It probably wasn't a mainstream issue, right? Corporate social responsibility was probably not even known as such and named as such many years ago. But if you think of a forestry company that has so many neighboring communities that transforms the landscape for the better most of the time, but also with certain impacts, you have to engage with those communities. You have to talk to your neighbors, and you have to make sure they benefit from your business.
And you probably there's some trust issues. You come into a community and you say you want to engage and you mean it, but there may be some resistance. What have you learned about how to break through that?
Of course, and I'm the first one to say we always, question companies. It's normal, right? So we have a fantastic team of people. Many of our employees that are in our social responsibility area come from the very same communities we're talking to. So we have a team that is formed by a lot of social scientists that understand how to listen to those communities, how to identify those needs, how to build the right programs to help address those needs. And we're continuously in dialogue. Any intervention we're going to do in the silviculture side of our business, we always go and talk to the communities first. We let them know. We listen to them. We tend to any needs, and we prepare any type of interaction so that we don't have any negative impact, and we make sure we always have positive impact with communities. But of course, we're learning. We don't always do it perfectly.
What surprised you about some of the things you've learned as you've talked to communities?
Oh, many things. And to be quite frank, I got here 7 months ago, and I didn't speak any Portuguese. So as I've come to visit communities, I think, I have come to understand them better and to listen to the impact of our programs. Some communities sometimes are like, oh, I miss Suzano. You guys need to come more often. Which actually worries me. They shouldn't become codependent, but at the same time, it's wonderful to see that they see the benefit of our interactions. I've seen, for instance, we visited this farm of a producer in Bahia, where the soil is completely sandy. It's the worst soil you can think of for production, and it's such a fertile farm. This guy is growing all sorts of crops in an agroforestry style, and he learned through another partner that we taught him, and he now has a school, and we bring a lot of the communities we work with to learn the best farming practices from him. And it's really nice to see this replication effect. It's like a domino effect. You work with one person, and this person gives back to more people in the community, and to me that's really inspiring, because we're not just helping or writing checks or feeling good. We're really transforming lives. Whether it's the video we saw of this Quilombola cooperative that gives services to our forestry area, or fishermen we work with, or people who are transforming food or preparing people for employability with different skills in urban areas. It's always seeing how we can learn from whatever we're doing and replicate and scale, and always in partnership, whether it's government, other companies, and figuring out how to find solutions to some of those social challenges we have identified.
To your questions and some of mine, and I want to say, first of all, they don't know these questions I'm going to ask, and also I want to thank all of you for not only asking those questions, but doing so in English, which I know is not your native tongue. So let's get into it. We have a lot of questions already, but keep them coming in. So Walter, let's start with you. I have questions about additionality of the carbon sequestration. The additionality, for those who don't know, is always activities are you doing that or extra that are adding, as opposed to things that would have happened normally just in the course of business. How do you measure the additionality, and how do you explain that to our audience?
I think it's very important to tackle this issue, because everyone has to understand that not all the carbon sequestration that we are doing should be subject to monetization. Only additionality is what we are doing, extra status quo. And what we are doing right now in this direction, we are expanding our forest base. We are expanding our native forest as well. Both of them are additionalities. On top of that, what we are doing is that we are retrofitting our plants to increase renewable energy, to reduce chemical consumption. All of them are related with additionalities that could be subject to monetization of carbon.
Well, Christine, I want to talk about forest and specifically about certification. First of all, not all of the forests are FSC or SFI certified. Why is that, and how do you get from here to there?
Fantastic question. Our certification is always fluid, right? We're always acquiring new land, leasing new land, planting new forests, so certification doesn't happen automatically. There's a number of actions that need to occur to get that certification. That said, we have full traceability of our value chain and of all the wood, both with FSC and PEFC criteria.
And are there plans to grow that, can you get to 100%?
So as I said, it's fluid, right? You don't automatically get certification the moment you plant a new tree or you lease new land or you buy new land. So we always have that activity to get the certification for the new wood.
Question, I'll start with you, but I'd love to hear others as well. You know, so much of what a company like Suzano does, you can talk about doing the right thing, you can talk about improving the bottom line, you can talk about attracting talent and all of the other things that sustainability can do. But ultimately, it's about risk. This is about risk mitigation. So how do you think, I'd love to hear, I'll start with you, but anyone else on the panel, how do you think about risk as it relates to biodiversity, social inequality or poverty, and of course climate change, and in terms of how that affects what you do and the plans you make?
So I will ask our colleague Fernando to answer this question related with risk. But before that, I think it's very important to mention about purpose. I think the company have a purpose to renew life through trees, through planted trees. We believe that we are in a regenerative world. We need to be part of the solution, and to do it, we need to recover the forest base that we had in Brazil at some pace in the near future. We need to use our trees to replace other materials. We believe that the combination of carbon sequestration that we are doing right now with our native forest and with planted forest, in the combination of replacing other materials, could be part of the solution to the world. Yeah. And purpose is critical to us. Now I'm going to ask Fernando to talk a little bit about risks.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Joel. Let's talk about the risk related to climate change, because I think this is on the top of our risks, the risks that we have in our business today. As we presented in the first part of this ESG call, during the last 3 decades, we have developed a new generation of genetic materials and also a new generation of management practices in order to deal with these new challenges. For example, more recently, we are using molecular markers based on very advanced tools in order to evaluate in a very precise way the quality of our materials in order to select those ones that are more adapted for more climate challenges. So I think these are one of the examples that we have developed together with partners all over the world. National and international partnerships are key in this case in order to deal with better practices, seeking for better solutions for deal with the risks that we have today.
We need to hedge our risk in terms of future yield productivity. Our perception is that we are going to see more droughts happen in the future due to climate change, and we need to be prepared for that. I think that Fernando and his team, they are doing an outstanding job to protect ourselves for the future.
Other thoughts about risk?
I would like to add the business risk aspect. Because by doing the products that we're doing, all based in planted trees, we are ensuring, among other things, the business continuity of the company in terms of the demand for our products. I think companies that are producing from sources that can be questioned from the sustainability point of view, they have a business risk in terms of continuity of the demand for their products. So whoever is buying our shares or buying debt issued by the company already has the benefit of being sure that in the future, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, whatever we produce based on these sustainability standards we have will continue to be demanded by the market, and therefore the company will continue to be in the business, very healthy and generating results.
Yeah, but there's so many uncertainties around in the future, particularly around climate. How do you bake that into your planning?
I think what we are doing here is that we are in a transition journey right now in the society. And to be prepared for this transition journey, as we have a lot of uncertainties, we need to hedge ourselves in different aspects. Not only in the financial side, but we need to be hedged on the forest side as well. We need to hedge the society on the biodiversity issue for the future. We are losing species in the world. We need to mitigate the situation. And our idea is that we embrace this cause for the future, working with different entities of the civil society.
One form of risk is policy risk. And Luis, I have a question for you in terms of what is the Brazilian policy environment right now? Is it helping, or is it in the way of Suzano meeting its sustainability goals?
Well, thanks for the question, Joel. First, we need to say that Brazil has one of the most strict and advanced environmental legislation in the world. Said that, we understand there is a huge area, the country has a huge area to protect. And we know that the country still lacks the resources, the right resources to protect this huge amount of area. So there is still room for improvement to enforce that this very good legislation is going to be practical, is going to be compliant in the day-to-day business. And we understand that there is a risk in this. As we were discussing in the previous question, the climate change imposes risks for all the businesses in the world, and ours included. We are trying to mitigate this risk with some of the actions that my colleagues mentioned before.
Yeah. A question for Marcelo about the sustainability-linked loans and bonds. First of all, maybe explain a little bit about what those are linked to and what we can expect to see going forward in terms of future debt issuances that Suzano goes out to in the market.
That's a very interesting question, because we've been using those instruments a lot, and not everybody is aware of how they are structured. Basically, when doing a sustainability-linked loan or bond, you're linking the results of a set of results related to sustainability to the compensation or remuneration that the bondholder or the loaner will have in the future. And it's a very nice way to link the targets that we have on the sustainability side with our financial performance. So in some of the transactions we did in the past, we attached to the loans or to the bonds goals related to emissions, goals related to diversity, and many different, to water consumption and others, that link the targets that we have from the sustainability point of view to the interest of the bondholders, of investors at the end of the day. There's a huge amount of money in the world seeking investments with environmental or social impact. And what we are providing to the market when coming with these transactions is a way to invest, seeking the returns they need, but also in instruments that will bring other results, other externalities that also attend the needs of the investors that are seeking impact investments. Today, more than a third of our debt, total debt is around $15 billion. More than $5 billion of our debt is issued under instruments like sustainability loans, sustainability-linked bonds, green bonds, and other instruments that we believe will continue to grow in terms of the demand, and we're going to be ready to continue to be part of those markets.
How does the current economic environment impact that? Rising interest rates, potential of a global recession. Is that going to change anything?
I think it's going to change the availability of funds. But on the other hand, I think for companies that have the kind of standards that we have, the trend, I think, is for us to be less impacted by companies in general, because we have something to offer to the market that is very special and is valued by the investor. So everybody suffers whenever we get to a situation, economic situation of recession, high interest rates, high inflation, but I think the companies that have those capabilities like Suzano has, we tend to suffer less and to be better positioned.
I'd like just to add on this, that since we are highly intensive in capital, we decided that we are going to have almost all of our debt with a fixed rates on our debt. Our average rate right now is 4.4% on a very long period, and then we are very comfortable that this short-term impact of higher interest rates are not going to affect ourselves.
Yeah, that was a lot of foresight to lock in the interest rate, I think, given the current environment. I have a question. I think it's a broad question, so I'm not sure. In fact, Aris, we haven't heard from you yet. I might start with you. You know, we talk about ESG as we know it's one thing, but it's not just three things. It's many things, and I'm wondering how you integrate the environmental, social, and governance in all of your work. Let's start with you, Aris, and then hear from others.
Thank you for your question, Joe. I think that a good example that you are practicing right now, it's our new product in Ribas do Rio Pardo. Of course, that we are totally committed with international laws and range of emissions and consumptions inside the fence. But we know that our mission is going over the fence. Then we checking the impacts that we will probably have in the education and the earnings and the social impacts in the society of Ribas. That's a small city, around 23,000 people living there. And during the construction, we have more than 10,000 employees inside the fence. Then this view that we have to be attentive for all stakeholders around our operations, I think it's our main action actually at the Suzano.
Yeah.
I'd like to add one point on that. I love the word of integration, as you have just raised. And I think a good example of the integration in our strategies, it's what we call, it's a mantra for us, is the innovability strategy. It's the combination of innovation and sustainability. So everything that we do at Suzano at this moment is dedicated to improve the solutions, talking to the sustainability values that we have established. I think it's important to emphasize that, because for us, the sustainability goals that we have established, it's not part of the strategy, it's the strategy of the company today. And normally we say that we are in the right side of the equation, because everything that we produce comes from planted forest, renewable raw material, but this is not take for granted. We have to innovate in solutions in order to provide that for the society. I think this is a good example of the integration in our strategy.
Yeah. Christina, do you want to weigh in?
No, I think proof of how sustainability and ESG is part of the company's strategy is the presence of my colleagues today, right? This is not something that I own. This is something that the whole company has committed to, and whether it's in the industrial side of our processes, whether it's in forestry, in logistics, and in innovation, in our financial vehicles, sustainability is very well embedded. We all have, of course I do, but everybody here has performance goals tied to their bonus that are related to sustainability and a couple of levels down at least as well. So I think Suzano has made a very bold commitment on all areas of what is considered ESG. And we understand the compounded effects, right? And how governance impacts social and environmental, how environmental impacts social and governance, et cetera. We understand that there are synergies in every sustainability topic.
Yeah. I'm sure it's very important that not everything that we are doing is perfect, but we are humble enough to understand, to bring the problems to the table and try to address how we are going to build the action plan to the future. I'm very proud of my team, that this team is very well focused on achieving targets on every single part of the company, not only the economic side, on the production, on the forest, and sustainability as well. And we have the other issue that is quite important, there is transparency. We have been bringing to everyone how we are performing right now and how we understand that we could evolve for the future. And I think it's very important, and we are learning. We are learning all the time. This is something, it's a process that we have in the company, and this learning process allows us to be humble enough to understand how we are going to operate in the future.
One of the words somebody brought up was innovation, and that's another word that we hear a lot about, and we all nod, of course, and who doesn't love innovation? But it means lots of different things. There's product, process, business model innovation, even value chain innovation. I'd love to hear what innovation means right now in this moment at Suzano. Who wants to take that one?
I can start here. I'd like to mention two, I think, very important points related to innovation. First of all, this is what we call the bio component of our strategy. Many years ago, we saw in the video that we started with a plantation model that was at that time unique. It's the mosaic system. This is innovation. So today we have a mosaic of eucalyptus plantations in different ages, different clones, interspersing with native forest that we preserve. It's not a big block of native forest and another big block of planted forest. No, they are together. And this was a big innovation that we did in the past, and this has a big impact in terms of landscape management and also in terms of water availability in the watersheds. The second point related to innovation, I think the targets that we have established, for example, the 10 million tons of materials to replace fossil raw materials, for example, it's a target that can transform the society. So innovation is not about incremental innovation, it's about transforming the society. We understand our responsibility, we understand our size, and because of that, I think we need to think big. We have to be bold in our aspirations in order to bring solutions to deliver new values to the society in general. I think innovation talks about that.
It's very important to add on that. Fernando brought the issue of the mosaic plantation. But now we realize that it would be very important to connect the fragmented areas. And this is a new innovation that we are doing. How we are going to connect? We are going to connect 500,000 hectares in different biomas of native forest. And this would allow to have a better biodiversity. Then we are all the time thinking and transforming the company for the future. I think this is part of the culture. It's embedded on our culture for decades right now. We were the first company to enter planting eucalyptus large scale in Brazil. We are the first company that used this to produce. In the beginning, everybody was claiming, no, eucalyptus is not going to give enough the right quality fiber to the products. Right now, on the tissue market, for example, we have 100% of short fiber from eucalyptus. Then we have all the time thinking about what would be for the future. We have been working on the fluff market, transforming for short fiber as well. Now, the next step, how we are going to have large production on the textile market. And bio-oil, we are all the time thinking about what would be the transformation for the future.
Yeah. And just to add on that, and the transformation is not limited to Suzano. We have a clear north on sustainability, and it's spread all over the areas. In our areas, we have a relationship with different stakeholders in the country and overseas. And our commitment is to influence those stakeholders in different ways so that they can commit to sustainability also. And then our influence is going to be even bigger if we replicate that and influence all the stakeholders. And this is done by all of us in all the areas together.
Can you give me an example?
For example, we have communities all over our areas, and we try to work with them so that they can be integrated in our business when it's possible. When it's not possible, how can we develop those communities with social projects that it's going to be good for Suzano and it's going to be good for those communities as well.
Yeah. And I can raise another point that I think is very important here, is that we cannot blame the past. We cannot blame other sectors that have higher intensity of carbon, because it's very easy to the haters to say, no, cement industry cannot operate, oil industry cannot operate. Consumers are using these products. They need these products right now. What we need to do is to have a collaborative approach with different sectors to mitigate the solution. then we are open and we are doing this to discuss with peers on our industry. Our industry is much better prepared for the future, but with other companies as well, to work together with a long-term solution for the society as a whole.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned consumers, and I'm wondering, you're mostly a B2B, business-to-business company. You have some consumer products as well, but how do you talk to consumers about all this? Because most consumers, they want to work or buy from good companies, or work for good companies, or invest, perhaps. But how do you know, everybody wants to claim that they're a good company. So what do you want consumers around the world, but it's certainly in your home country, to understand about Suzano, and what's the story you're trying to tell?
If I may, Joel, as a consumer who's very new to this sector and who has always have had a sustainability drive, I was always looking for these certifications and these seals that would tell me the source of that material was an ethical source, right? So if I would see the FSC logo or other types of logos, it would help me decide over that product, for that product over another one. And I think that that's something that we need to communicate to consumers, and that we do much more beyond certifications, right? Suzano does much more than what certifying bodies require. And however we can get to consumers that information, I think it can help drive some of those decisions.
Yeah. And we are not talking about advertising here. We are talking about inviting people to this transition. We need to the transition of the society. Then we are not here on the ESG Call just to sell a very nice and perfect company. We are here to show everyone the journey that we are going, the learning process that we are going, that would help the society and would help the business as well to have a better world in the near future. And I think it's very important to talk with, right now we are reaching 2 billion people every month in the world, 2 billion people.
How do you reach them? Through what ways?
With our products. We are reaching 2 billion people, but we are reaching the 8 billion people with our carbon sequestration. Then we know that we can do it much more for the future. Just Iris mentioned to you, our Cerrado project, it's going to be by far the lowest, not only cost producer in the world, but the world lowest emission per ton in the world. And I think this would be very positive to the society. We are creating renewable and recyclable products to the society.
So just to clarify, that 2 billion, is that through Suzano's own products, or through like Procter & Gamble products, for example, or how do you measure that?
It's through our customers. We have a very large market share in different regions in the world, and we are seeing how many customers they are reaching is not directly from Suzano.
So that's really interesting. You have 2 billion people every month. What does that opportunity create for the company, and for that matter for the world, in terms of leveraging those relationships? Christina?
We're looking at that. That's a great question, and we're building partnerships with some of our clients. We have some partnerships on the ground, projects here in Brazil to protect basins, to work with communities. We're working with new clients to structure projects. It's a very large opportunity that we need to tap into somewhat more, right? And not just with our clients, with governments, with nonprofits, et cetera, to enlarge our impact. It certainly gives us an opportunity, and Luis here in the consumer goods side has helped put some of the messaging on the products of the positive impact Suzano is having on the field, and would love to be able to do that with some of our clients, to show how we're protecting biodiversity, to show how we're helping communities, and that they can own those impacts.
And perhaps Fernando can bring to us what would the new products would impact the society for the future.
For example, we are developing now a project with our partner in Finland called Spinova, and we formed a joint venture with them in order to provide textile fiber in a totally different way of producing, with a big reduction in terms of water consumption, a very, very big reduction in terms of water consumption, in terms of chemical consumption, compared with the other alternative that we have today. So we are really transforming the society with our new products. Bio-oil is coming as well. can be an alternative, a kind of biopetroleum that we can use for biofuels, but beyond that, for bioproducts in general, coming from the bio-oil production, coming from planted forest again, based in our forest model again. So these are some examples.
And lignin as well.
Lignin as well, MFC, so microfibrillated cellulose that we can apply in paints, in cosmetics. We have already some products developed coming from our MFC, microfibrillated cellulose, applied to cosmetics, for example. So several examples that the main question that we have every day is how can we do more out of our trees? So this is, I think, using our bio competence, we can provide new solutions for the world.
Yeah, interesting. Go ahead.
Put on one more point that's important in the pillar of our decisions. Our investments are not based in the short term. When you decide to settle down a facility in one city, we stay there for decades. Then we have to look forward longer years and understand the impact that we will put in that region. That's the importance that we attend all time of these impacts in the society and try to drive our actions in order to enhance the quality of life of the people that are around our operations.
Yeah. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I want to ask each of you the following two questions. So I'm going to ask you to keep your answers kind of short. And again, you don't know that I'm going to ask these questions, and they're really putting you on the spot in a way. And Arisa, I'm going to start with you. When you think about ESG and Suzano, what keeps you up at night?
Thank you for asking me before.
And if somebody else wants to jump in, if they have an answer before you formulate.
Let me try to help you. Based on, for me, ESG, it's based on, for me, it's the opportunity that you have to transform the society. I'm thinking every day, Joel, to the world that we leave to our kids, to our grandsons and the grandkids in the future, and we have to bring new solutions. Yeah. And this is what moves me every day. What I wake up every day thinking, how can I bring new solutions to transform the society? I think this is what means ESG for me.
Great. Who else?
So what keeps me up at night is what we talked about before, the glass half empty or half full, and really having shared value with all of our stakeholders or most of our stakeholders. How do we strike that balance where everybody benefits of what Suzano's benefiting?
Yeah.
I think that's when we achieve a certain level of our careers, what motivates us is more than the money that you earn or the challenge that you have, but how can contribute to the society. Okay. And I think that's in Suzano we have this opportunity daily. Every day you can come and work and find out new solutions to enhance the quality of life of a lot of people.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm very grateful to be part of this company and to be part of this journey. And so when I think about the journey, it's going to be, what I like in Suzano is that we set a high ambition and we go for it. Yeah. And it's going to take time, years to transform. And to be part of this journey, I feel very grateful and lucky to be here.
I think it's very exciting to be in a company that has all the opportunities that we've been discussing here. We are, like Fernando said, at the right side of the equation. So we have the ability to contribute on a very impactful way to the improvement of the society. So this is very nice, and I'm also grateful for being part of this environment. What keeps me up at night related to that is the fact that, especially because we are in Brazil and in certain remote regions where the environment, where the social situation is so complex that everything we do is just a tiny improvement to all this situation.
But all those tiny things add up. So, Walter?
I think two things that is quite important for me. One is scale, as you mentioned before. We need to how we are going to create scale on this transformation of the society. And the second thing that strikes me is the speed. We cannot anymore procrastinate the solution to the society. We need to do something much quicker than we are doing. And this is, I'm not seeing the society going in the right direction right now. Yeah. We are seeing more poverty, we are seeing more climate crisis in the world, we are losing biodiversity. And every day is worse than the day before. We need to change completely the trend for the near future.
We're kind of out of time, so I'm not going to get to my second question, but I am going to ask you if you can answer it in 1 minute, Walter. When we meet back here for ESG Call 2030, what's the story you hope to be able to tell about Suzano as it relates to ESG?
My hope is that we are going to have a completely different company in the near future. We have been transforming the company. The video of this company is very nice, but the ambition is much bigger for the future. I hope that in 2030, when Fernando comes here, he said, we are leading the textile company in the world. We are leading the bio-oil company in the world. When Christina comes here on the 2030, she came to us and said, we would able in this period completely transform the biodiversity. We not only bring 200,000 people out of poverty in this period, but we are generating sustainable income to them and education to the kids with high quality educations. And then I would be very proud of them.
Well, that's a great vision, and we are out of time. Thank you for your questions. We didn't get to them all, but we got to a lot of them. And thank you all for being such good sports and taking them all on. And Walter, I'll give you the last word.
I would like to thank you, Joe, very much for this participation and for being here with us today. And also to our colleagues, all of them who are, as Christina said before, are working with us to enable to the regeneration of nature and building a more equal society. To be able to have a positive impact, our business needs to thrive and continue to provide ever more sustainable products to the society through continued innovation and commitment. Our colleagues truly understand that ESG performance and our financial performance are independent, which ultimately strengthen the other. I want to thank the partners, supplier institutions that have joined us, our accepted us in their initiatives to enable change, and the word is change. I also thank my regards to each of the participants in our nature conservation and regenerative programs, and those in the income generation programs. That is quite important, Christine. Yes. And you have been telling you all the time how important it is for us. And I always say that the fight for the planet is a fight that only has two possible scenarios: the victory for all or a collective defeat. Today we have an opportunity for us to share, but more importantly, to connect and to learn. And thus discovering new ways to be a catalyst for a new regenerative society by transforming this into an increasingly regenerative company. Thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone join us on this process.
When you choose paper packaging that will remove millions of tons of plastic from store shelves and the sea, nature applauds. When you choose sustainable fabric that will replace synthetic yarn that pollutes the planet, nature celebrates. When you replace plastic bags with paper bags, nature notices that you are doing your part. All this may seem like a drop in the ocean, but it's drop by drop that we will change the world and plant a better future. There is no bioeconomy without bioconsumers. What you choose and buy changes the course of the planet.